Today we're going to continue our discussion about stigma and talk about 4 myths about mental illness on Mental Health Minute with Kim. One of the ways to fight stigma surrounding mental illness is to address the myths that people believe about it. And if you do a Google search, you'll find tons of myths that people believe about mental illness. Today we're only going to address 4 of them because of the short nature of this program, but you can do a search yourself and find others. So the first myth that we're going to talk about is people with mental illness are more violent than people without mental illness. This is simply not true. People who have a mental illness are no more likely to commit violent crimes than people who don't have mental illness, and in fact are more likely to be the victims of violent crimes than are people who don't have mental illness because they are more vulnerable in their mental state. The second myth we're going to talk about is medication is enough to treat mental illness. You don't need therapy. Study after study has shown that medication is more effective when it's used in conjunction with therapy instead of just using medication alone to treat mental illness. Now, the analogy I like to use with people to explain medication and therapy is getting shot. Let's say you get shot in the shoulder, and a symptom of getting shot is bleeding. So you have to stop that bleeding. You have to put some pressure on it, maybe use some gauze, a shirt, whatever you can to stop the bleeding. The bleeding is a symptom of being shot. However, just putting the Band-Aid on it does not stop the gunshot wound from being there. You still have to go in and treat the gunshot wound and maybe even get the bullet out. So medication and therapy are like that. Medication can be used to treat some of the symptoms, and then therapy can get to the root problem, typically, that is causing those symptoms. The third myth that we're going to talk about is having a mental illness just means you're weak and can't handle things. There are a number of reasons why we have mental illnesses. It could be a chemical imbalance. There could have been trauma in our childhood. Our coping mechanisms may have been overwhelmed and we get depression or anxiety. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you've gotten overwhelmed with things. The last myth we're going to tackle is that people who have a mental illness aren't able to go to school or work or be productive or live a happy life. Again, not true. Now, there might be some people who have a mental illness who may not be able to work or go to school or do these other things, just like there are people who have a physical illness who aren't able to do these things. But a good majority of people who have a mental illness with the right treatment that may include behavior modification, medication, therapy, all kinds of things. There is no reason that they cannot live a happy, quote-unquote, normal life, get married, have children if that's what they want to do, go on and get degrees, be teachers, be whatever they want to be, just like the rest of us. Again, these are just a few of the myths surrounding mental illness, and it's important to know and understand these myths so that we can start to fight the stigma, because people who have a mental illness sometimes don't seek help because of the stigma surrounding it. And we don't want that to happen. We want people to live as happy and full a life as they can, and we want to support them in any way we can. So I encourage you to look up online other myths about mental illness so that you can be one of the people who helps fight the stigma. I'll see you next week.